The grand halls of Typho Station hummed with energy as the Girath Empire's delegation arrived. Towering alien warriors in silver and blue armor marched in perfect formation, their sharp, angular helmets reflecting the bright overhead lights. At the center of them all was Queen Silara, a vision of power and grace. Her deep violet skin shimmered under the station's artificial lighting, and her golden eyes held a commanding presence that few dared to meet. The moment she stepped forward, her gaze landed on a group of human security officers standing at attention near the entrance. Among them, one man stood out, Sergeant Daniel Reeves. For a brief second, Queen Silara froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Her entire body tensed as if she had seen a ghost. Daniel noticed the Queen's piercing stare. He was trained to stand firm under pressure, but something about the way she was looking at him made his skin crawl. He wasn't doing anything wrong, just standing where he was assigned. So why was this powerful alien queen staring at him as if she knew him? Silara clenched her hands, her sharp nails pressing against her palms. It can't be. Her mind screamed against the thought, but her heart raced with emotions she hadn't felt in years. The human guard looked exactly like him, her ex-husband, the warrior who had vanished 10 years ago, her bondmate whom she had once loved with all her heart. But it was impossible. He had been a proud Girath warrior, not a human. Yet, standing before her was a man who bore his face, his posture, even the way he held his hands behind his back. Silara's sudden silence did not go unnoticed. Her advisors glanced at her in concern, and the Girath warriors remained still, waiting for her command. The humans, including Daniel, exchanged confused glances. Then she spoke. "You." Silara's voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "What is your name?" Daniel blinked. Was she talking to him? The Queen Silara. "Sergeant Daniel Reeves, Mom," he replied, his voice steady but unsure. A murmur ran through the Girath delegation. The Queen never spoke directly to station guards, especially not humans. Silara took a slow step forward, examining his face closely. Daniel had to fight the urge to step back. He had been through intense battlefield scenarios before, but never had he felt this kind of pressure from just someone's eyes. "Where are you from?" she asked. Daniel hesitated. "Originally from Earth, but I've served across several human colonies." Silara's mind raced. Earth? No, it was impossible. This had to be a trick, some kind of experiment, or something even stranger. She turned to her chief scientist, Advisor Vera, a slender Girath woman with sharp blue markings across her skin. "Run a background check," Silara ordered, keeping her eyes locked on Daniel. "I want to know everything about him." Daniel stiffened at the request. Background check. What was this all about? Vera hesitated for a moment before nodding. "At once, Your Majesty." Silara turned back to Daniel. Every instinct told her this was not a coincidence. Even if the resemblance was an accident, she needed to know the truth. "Sergeant Reeves," she said, her voice softer now. "You are dismissed. For now." Daniel nodded. "Yes, Mom." He stepped back, still confused, but didn't dare question the Queen in front of her entire delegation. As he walked away, Silara watched his every movement. It was too perfect. The way he moved, the way he held himself, it was just like him. She whispered under her breath, too quiet for anyone to hear. "Who are you?" Sergeant Daniel Reeves sat in his quarters, running a hand through his short brown hair. What just happened back there? He had never seen the Queen of the Girath Empire before today, yet she looked at him as if he were someone important, someone she knew. It didn't make sense. He had been a soldier all his life, first in the Earth Defense Corps, and now as part of the United Galactic Alliance. His life had been ordinary, at least as ordinary as a soldier's life could be. He had no connections to the Girath Empire, no alien ancestry, no deep secrets. So why did the Queen look at him like that? A knock on his door pulled him from his thoughts. The metal door slid open, revealing Captain Elias Carter, the station's commanding officer. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with gray at his temples and sharp blue eyes. "Sergeant," Carter said, stepping inside and crossing his arms. "You've caught the Queen's attention." Daniel frowned. "Sir, with all due respect, I don't know why." Carter studied him for a moment before nodding. "I believe you." He let out a sigh. "But the Jirath don't act without reason. The Queen has ordered a full background check on you. They're scanning every record, every mission, even your genetic data." Daniel's jaw tightened. "That's excessive, don't you think?" Carter smirked. "I don't think the Queen cares what we think. She's looking for something, and you're at the center of it." Daniel exhaled sharply. "Sir, I'm just a soldier. There's nothing special about me." Carter patted his shoulder. "Then we'll find out soon enough, won't we?" The door closed, leaving Daniel alone with his thoughts again. Meanwhile, in the Jirath delegation's private chambers, Queen Silura stood in front of a large holoscreen displaying Daniel's human records. Born on Earth, no alien ancestry, no history of genetic experiments, no special modifications. And yet, he looked exactly like Helix. Her former husband, the greatest warrior of the Jirath Empire, had vanished 10 years ago. He was presumed dead, lost in a battle that should have been impossible to escape. Could it really be a coincidence? Advisor Vera stepped forward, her long fingers tapping against the screen. "Your Majesty, all records confirm he is fully human. No Jirath DNA, no genetic tampering. It is impossible." Silura clenched her jaw. "Then how do you explain this?" She pointed at the images. Daniel's face side by side with an old image of Helix. They were identical. Vera hesitated. "There is one possibility." Silura turned to her sharply. "Speak." Vera took a breath. "There were rumors, years ago, about illegal cloning experiments. Scientists attempting to recreate great warriors using forbidden methods. The Council destroyed all records. But what if one experiment survived?" Silura's golden eyes darkened. "You're saying someone took Helix's genetic material and created a clone on Earth?" Vera nodded. "If it is true, then Sergeant Daniel Reeves is not just a human. He is something else entirely." Silura's hands tightened into fists. If this was true, it meant someone had taken her husband's legacy and hidden it among humans. And Daniel had no idea. She turned away from the screen. "Bring him to me. I want to see his reaction when he hears the truth." Daniel was in the station's training hall, working through combat drills, when his communicator beeped. "Sergeant Reeves, report to the Jirath delegation chambers immediately." Daniel sighed. "Here we go again." A few minutes later, he stood before Queen Silura once more. This time, the tension in the air was even stronger. Silura stepped closer, her golden eyes studying him carefully. "Sergeant Reeves, do you have any unusual memories? Visions of places you have never been?" Daniel frowned. "No, ma'am. Just normal dreams, I guess." Her gaze sharpened. "What kind of dreams?" Daniel hesitated. He wasn't sure why she was asking, but he decided to be honest. "Lately, I've been seeing flashes of something. A battlefield. Stars I don't recognize. And a voice calling my name, but not my name." Silura's breath hitched. "What name?" Daniel swallowed. "Helix." Silence filled the room. The guard stiffened. Vera exchanged a stunned look with Silura. Daniel noticed the reaction. His heart pounded. "Okay, I take it that means something." Silura's voice was barely above a whisper. "Helix was my husband." Daniel took a step back, confusion washing over him. "That's not possible. I'm human." Silura's expression was unreadable. "You may believe that, Sergeant, but the truth is far more complicated." Daniel's mind raced. Who was he, really? And why did it feel like his life had just changed forever? Daniel Reeves sat frozen, staring at Queen Silura in disbelief. Helix was my husband. The words echoed in his mind, but they made no sense. He had never seen this woman before today. He had never been to the Gyreth homeworld. He had never even met an alien before his deployment. And yet, here he was, being told that he somehow looked exactly like the Queen's dead husband. His pulse pounded. "I think there's been a mistake," he said finally. "I'm just a soldier. I was born on Earth. My parents." Silara raised a hand, stopping him. Her golden eyes studied his face with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "Your past may not be what you believe, Sergeant Reeves," she said. "There is something unnatural about your existence." Daniel clenched his fists. "I'm not unnatural." "Then explain your dreams," she said. His breath caught in his throat. The dreams. For years, he had seen strange images in his sleep, flashes of battlefields under alien stars, strange weapons in his hands, and a voice calling a name that was not his own. Helix. He had always assumed they were just random dreams, products of his imagination. But now he wasn't so sure. Thilara turned to Advisor Vera, who stood silently beside her. "Tell him what you told me." Vera hesitated, then spoke. "Sergeant Reeves, we have searched through every record in the galaxy. By all accounts, you are fully human, but there were rumors, whispers of forbidden cloning experiments." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. "Cloning." Vera nodded. "Many years ago, some Gyreth scientists sought to recreate our greatest warriors. Helix was the strongest among them. If someone had stolen his genetic material and created a clone..." Daniel shook his head sharply. "No, that's impossible." But was it? His heart pounded. He had always felt different from the other soldiers, stronger, faster, as if battle came naturally to him. Could it really be because he was someone else? Silara stepped closer, her voice softer now. "Sergeant Reeves, Daniel, if there is even a chance that you are connected to Helix, I must know the truth." Daniel exhaled shakily. "And what if I am? What does that mean for me?" Silara's golden eyes darkened. "It means you are not just a soldier. You are part of something far greater than you ever imagined." The tension in the room was unbearable. The guards watched Daniel with suspicion. Vera kept stealing glances at the Queen, as if worried about what she might do next. Daniel took a deep breath. "Let's say you're right. Let's say someone cloned your husband, and somehow I ended up on Earth. Who would have done that? And why?" Vera exchanged a look with Silara before speaking. If this was done, then it was by someone with power and influence. Someone who wanted Helix's strength, but did not want the Gyreth Empire to have him. Daniel frowned. "You're saying someone hid me on Earth?" Silara's expression was unreadable. "Perhaps, or perhaps you were meant to return when the time was right." Daniel let out a short, humorless laugh. "Well, if that was the plan, it failed. I don't remember being anyone else. I'm just me." Silara's gaze softened. "Perhaps. But memories can be buried deep." Daniel swallowed. "So what now? Are you going to, I don't know, lock me up? Experiment on me?" The Queen's eyes narrowed. "I am not a monster, Sergeant." Daniel sighed. "Then what do you want from me?" Silara hesitated. "I want you to come with us, to the Gyreth homeworld." Daniel's eyes widened. "Excuse me?" Vera nodded. "If you truly are connected to Helix, the answers may be found there." Daniel crossed his arms. "And if I say no?" Silara stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then you may never know who you really are." Daniel clenched his jaw. A part of him wanted to walk away, to forget all of this. But another part, the part that had always wondered about his strange dreams, about the warrior inside him that he never understood, that part wanted to know the truth. Finally, he exhaled and looked at the Queen. "Fine, I'll go." Silara gave a small nod. "Then prepare yourself, Sergeant Reeves. Your real journey is just beginning. The massive Gyrethian warship loomed over the human base like a shadow from another world. Its sleek, dark metal shimmered under the sun, giving it an almost living presence. Daniel Reeves stood at the foot of the ramp, staring up at the alien vessel. This was it. There was still time to turn back, to forget everything and return to his life as a soldier. But the Queen's words haunted him. Then you may never know who you really are. Taking a deep breath, Daniel adjusted his gear and stepped forward. As he walked up the ramp, Queen Silera stood waiting for him at the entrance. Her golden eyes watched him closely, searching for something. He didn't know if she found it, but she gave a small nod of approval. "Welcome aboard, Sergeant Reeves." The moment he crossed the threshold, the air felt different, thicker, charged with something unseen. The inside of the ship was nothing like a human vessel. Dark, smooth walls pulsed with a faint blue light, responding to their presence. There were no buttons, no control panels, just strange organic curves and glowing pathways. Daniel had never seen anything like it. "Your human ships are made of metal and wires," Queen Silera said, walking beside him. "Ours are grown, not built. They live and respond to us." Daniel raised an eyebrow. Grown ships. That was new. A tall Gyrethian warrior approached and saluted Silera. His armor was black and gold, much more elaborate than the other guards. He glanced at Daniel with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "My queen, the ship is ready for departure." Silera nodded. "Good. Set the course for Gyreth Prime." The warrior hesitated for a moment. "And the human?" Silara's voice was firm. "He is under my protection. Treat him as you would treat me." Daniel didn't miss the way the warrior's jaw tightened. Clearly, not everyone was happy about his presence. The ship shuddered as it broke through Earth's atmosphere. Daniel looked out a nearby viewport, watching as his homeworld shrank beneath him. A strange feeling settled in his chest. Was he really leaving Earth, just like that? "Are you afraid?" Silera's voice was softer now. Daniel scoffed. "I've been in war zones. I've faced death more times than I can count. This is just different." Silera studied him. "You are strong, just like Hallex." Daniel tensed at the name. He still wasn't sure how he felt about it. Was he really connected to this alien warrior, or was this all some mistake? Silera turned and gestured for him to follow. "Come, there is something you should see." She led him through a series of corridors, each one twisting and shifting slightly, as if the ship itself was alive. Finally, they stopped in front of a sealed chamber. Silera placed her palm against the door. The glowing veins in the walls pulsed, and with a low hiss, the door slid open. Inside, the room was dimly lit, but Daniel's eyes were immediately drawn to the massive holographic display in the center. It showed a tall, armored figure standing proudly, his silver-white hair flowing behind him like a king's mantle. His face was sharp, his features strong, and Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The man in the hologram looked exactly like him. It was like looking into a mirror. Daniel took an unsteady step forward. "Is that?" Silera nodded. "Helix." The silence was deafening. Daniel's hands curled into fists. How is this possible? Vera, who had been standing quietly at the back, finally spoke. "The genetic markers are too similar. Either you are his clone, or—" She hesitated. "Or what?" Daniel demanded. Vera glanced at the Queen before answering. "Or you are his rebirth." Daniel frowned. "Rebirth? That doesn't make sense. Humans don't." "Humans don't," Silera interrupted. "But Gyrethians, we do." Daniel turned to her sharply. "What are you saying?" Silera's expression was unreadable. "I'm saying that there are ancient stories of warriors being reborn, their spirits taking new forms in different lifetimes. If you are truly Helix, then you were never human to begin with." The words hit him like a shockwave. Daniel took a step back, his mind racing. This couldn't be real. He was human. He grew up on Earth. He had memories, a childhood, a family. But then, why had he always felt different? The strange dreams, the instinct in battle, the feeling that he never truly belonged. Silara watched him closely. We will find the truth, Daniel. When we reach Gyreth Prime, you will see for yourself. Daniel clenched his fists. And what if I don't like the truth? Silara's golden eyes gleamed. Then you will have to decide who you truly are. As the ship sped toward Gyreth Prime, Daniel realized one terrifying truth. His life would never be the same again. The journey through space was longer than Daniel expected. The Gyrathian warship moved faster than any human vessel, but the distance between Earth and Gyreth Prime was vast. Inside the ship, Daniel spent his time observing, learning, and questioning everything. He watched how the Gyrathians operated their living vessel, how the walls pulsed with energy as if responding to silent commands. The food they ate was unlike anything on Earth, and their language, though complex, was starting to sound familiar to him. Too familiar. It was unsettling. Silara rarely left his side. She answered his questions but kept many things secret. Every time he pressed for more details about Hallex, she would simply say, "You will understand when we arrive." But Daniel wasn't patient. He needed answers. One night, or at least what felt like night inside the ship, he sat alone in a quiet chamber. The walls glowed faintly, casting soft shadows. He stared at his reflection in the polished metal. He still looked human. He still felt like himself. But what if that wasn't the truth? A soft hiss broke the silence as the door slid open. Queen Silara entered, her long cloak flowing behind her. She studied him for a moment before speaking. "You have questions." Daniel exhaled sharply. "Yeah, a lot of them." Silara walked closer, her golden eyes calm. "Then ask." He looked at her. "Am I really Hallex, or is this just a mistake?" Silara sighed. "I do not know for sure, but your face, your instincts, everything points to a connection. And when we reach Gyreth Prime, we will find out the truth." Daniel clenched his jaw. "And if I don't like the truth?" Silara gave a small, sad smile. "Then you must decide what to do with it." Her words did little to ease his mind. "RIGLHZHYRITH Prime." The ship shuddered as it entered Gyrathian space. Daniel stood at the main viewport, staring in awe. Gyreth Prime was massive. A world of towering cities, floating structures, and deep blue skies. The architecture was a mix of ancient stone and futuristic technology. Glowing pathways stretched across the landscape like rivers of energy. And above all, at the heart of the capital, stood a colossal fortress, the royal palace. The ship descended toward the landing bay, guided by golden beacons. As they touched down, Daniel took a deep breath. This was it. Silara placed a hand on his shoulder. "Are you ready?" He wasn't sure, but he nodded anyway. The doors opened, revealing a grand welcoming platform. Hundreds of Gyrathians stood in perfect formation, their armor gleaming under the sun. Banners of the royal house waved in the wind, displaying an insignia Daniel had seen before, in his dreams. At the center of it all stood a tall, regal figure in golden robes. His eyes burned with wisdom and power. He was older, but his presence was overwhelming. "That is High Lord Vexer," Silara whispered, one of the elders who ruled alongside Hallex. Daniel straightened his posture as the High Lord approached. Vexer studied him carefully, his sharp gaze unblinking. Then, in a deep, steady voice, he spoke. "It is true. The face of our lost warrior has returned." The crowd murmured in astonishment. Some bowed their heads. Others whispered among themselves. Daniel remained silent, his fists clenched. He didn't know what to say. Vexer stepped closer. Do you remember anything?" Daniel hesitated. "I remember dreams, visions, but they aren't mine." The High Lord nodded slowly. Then we must awaken what is buried inside you. Stellara took a step forward. We have prepared the chamber of truth. If he is truly Helix, the chamber will reveal it. Daniel looked at her. And if I'm not? Vexer's expression darkened. Then you are an outsider wearing the face of a legend. A cold feeling settled in Daniel's chest. Without another word, Vexer turned and gestured for them to follow. The crowd parted as Daniel, Stellara, and a group of warriors made their way toward the ancient palace. The Chamber of Truth. The chamber was deep inside the palace, hidden beneath layers of stone and energy barriers. The air was heavy with history. In the center of the room stood a massive circular platform, surrounded by glowing symbols. Vexer gestured toward it. Step forward, Daniel Reeves. Daniel swallowed hard but obeyed. He stood in the center of the platform. The moment he did, the symbols began to glow brighter. The walls trembled. The air felt charged with unseen power. Then it began. Flashes of memory, not his own, rushed into his mind. A battlefield, burning with blue flames. A warrior clad in silver armor, standing against an army. A woman with golden eyes, reaching out to him. Stellara. Helix's memories. Daniel's legs buckled. He gasped, gripping his head as images flooded his mind. The war, the betrayal, the final battle, his death. And then, darkness. Everything went silent. When he opened his eyes, he saw Stellara standing before him, her face filled with hope and fear. Daniel's hands trembled. He looked up at Vexer. His voice was barely above a whisper. I remember. The chamber's lights dimmed. Silence filled the room. Stellara's eyes shone. Then it is true. Vexer nodded solemnly. Helix has returned. The words settled in Daniel's mind, heavy as a mountain. But was he really Helix, or was he just a man caught in someone else's destiny? Only time would tell. Daniel stood in silence, his mind still spinning from the overwhelming rush of memories. He had seen things, lived things, that weren't his own, yet they felt real, like distant echoes of another life. Stellara watched him closely, her golden eyes filled with hope and something else. Vexer took a step forward, his gaze sharp. If you remember, then speak. Who are you? Daniel took a deep breath. The words formed in his mind before he could stop them. I am Helix. The moment he spoke, a ripple of energy surged through the chamber. The glowing symbols around him flared brighter, casting long shadows across the ancient walls. The warriors standing at the edges of the room exchanged uncertain glances. Some bowed their heads, while others clenched their fists. Vexer remained still, unreadable. Stellara exhaled, her expression a mix of relief and disbelief. Then it is true. But Daniel wasn't sure if he believed it himself. Yes, he had seen the memories. He had felt the past. But was he really Helix, the lost warrior of Jirath? Or was he just a human who happened to look like him? I don't know what this means, Daniel admitted. I don't feel different. I'm still me. Vexer studied him. Then we must test you. Daniel tensed. Test me how? The High Lord gestured toward a doorway at the far end of the chamber. It slid open with a low hiss, revealing a dark tunnel leading deep into the palace. The Chamber of Trials, Stellara whispered. Vexer nodded. If you are truly Helix, then your instincts, your strength, will prove it. You must face the trials alone. And if you fail, Daniel didn't need him to finish the sentence. He understood the meaning. Failure would mean he was just an imposter wearing a dead warrior's face. Stellara stepped forward. Daniel, you don't have to do this. You're all ready. I'll do it, he interrupted. He didn't know why, but something inside him needed to see this through. He needed to know the truth. Vexer gestured toward the entrance. Then enter. Daniel took a deep breath and stepped inside. The doors slammed shut behind him. The Chamber of Trials. The air was cold, thick with the scent of stone and energy. The only light came from strange glowing lines running along the walls, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. Daniel stepped forward cautiously. Then the ground shifted. A section of the floor collapsed, revealing a deep pit of swirling shadows. Daniel barely jumped back in time. A second later, massive stone pillars shot up from below, forming a narrow path forward. A test of agility. He took a steadying breath, then moved. He leaped from pillar to pillar, his muscles responding faster than he expected. He wasn't an athlete back on Earth, yet his body moved with precision, like it had done this before. His heart pounded as he made the final jump, rolling onto solid ground just as the pillars sank back into the abyss. Before he could catch his breath, the walls shifted again. A deep growl echoed through the chamber. Daniel turned and froze. Standing before him was a massive creature, its body covered in dark, jagged armor. Its eyes glowed with a hungry light. A test of strength. The creature lunged. Daniel dodged, but not fast enough. A clawed hand raked across his shoulder, sending him tumbling to the ground. Pain flared through his body. He gritted his teeth. No time for doubt. The creature attacked again, but this time, he reacted differently. Without thinking, his hands moved in a pattern he had never learned before. He twisted his body, evading the strike, and drove his fist into the beast's chest. Energy flared from his palm. The creature howled in pain. He had wielded them before. Silara's breath caught. She had seen those movements before, long ago, when Halleck stood where Daniel stood now. Vexor unsheathed his own weapon, a massive energy axe, glowing with raw power. "Let the duel begin," one of the warriors roared. With a thunderous crash, Vexor lunged. The battle begins. Daniel barely dodged the first strike as Vexor's axe slammed into the ground, sending up a burst of sparks. He rolled to the side, gripping his twin blades tighter. He could feel the weight, the balance. It was all too familiar, too natural. Vexor attacked again, swinging with force meant to crush him. Daniel reacted without thinking. He parried the blow, his body moving as if it remembered the rhythm of combat. The warriors watching gasped. He was fighting exactly like Helix. But Daniel wasn't just relying on memories. He was still himself, still human, and humans fought differently. Vexor went for a heavy downward strike. Instead of blocking, Daniel stepped in. Using his smaller size, he slid under the attack, striking at Vexor's exposed side. His blade cut through the armor, leaving a bright scar of energy. The crowd cheered. Vexor grinned. "You fight well." Daniel didn't answer. He focused. He was in the moment. The two warriors clashed, their weapons blazing in the moonlight. Sparks flew as metal met energy. Daniel dodged, countered, adapted. Vexor was stronger, but Daniel was faster. And then, it happened. Vexor made a mistake. For just a second, his balance shifted. Daniel saw his opening. With a quick movement, he disarmed Vexor, sending the energy axe spinning across the arena. Silence fell over the warriors. Daniel stood over Vexor, his twin blades crossed in front of him. His breathing was heavy, but his mind was clear. Vexor stared at him. Then, he laughed. "You truly are Halix's successor," he said. "And yet, you are more than that. You are something new." He bowed his head. The warriors around the arena did the same. The recognition. Daniel took a deep breath as he lowered his weapons. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from realization. He had won. He had proved himself. Silara stepped forward, her golden eyes shining. She smiled, a real smile. "You did it," she whispered. Daniel turned to the warriors. "I am not just Helix," he said, his voice steady. "I am Daniel. I am human. And I am here to fight with you, not just for you." The warriors roared in approval. Vexor placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Then let us prepare, Commander. There is a war to win. A new beginning." As the warriors cheered, Silara stood beside Daniel. "You have changed everything," she said. Daniel looked up at the twin moons. Maybe, but this was just the beginning. A new path awaited, and he was ready to walk it.